Hi, everyone. Welcome to Open Learning Talks. I hope you can hear me all okay. I'm Meghan Perdue, a digital learning scientist at MIT School of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences. And I've worked with Professor Tom Kochan for a number of years on his MITx course, Shaping Work of the Future. We'll talk about that course as well as some other projects that have been inspired by that course today in this conversation. So I'm going to introduce Tom, and then we'll get into that discussion in a moment. But first, a quick few housekeeping notes. So I'm going to ask Tom to tell us a little bit about himself and his work, and then he and I will both share some background about the course and some stories and lessons that we've learned. And then for the last 15 minutes or so, we'll open it up to audience Q&A. At any time, please feel free to put questions for our panelists in the chat. Our moderators, Janine and Catherine, will be collecting all of the questions for us to go through during the Q&A. And if you would like to go on camera, just and ask your question directly, use the raise hand function, and a moderator will promote you to panelists during the Q&A, so you can ask us yourself. If you have any questions about any of this, you can put them in the chat, and the moderators will help you. So great, let's get started. So as I said, Tom Kochan taught Shaping Work of the Future on MITx for 6 years. He's a professor of management and a professor post-tenure of work and employment research at MIT Sloan School of Management, where he focuses on the need to update America's work and employment policies, institutions, and practices to catch up with a changing workforce and economy. So Tom, I'll turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about your work and research generally, and then we can talk more about our course.
Good. Well, thank you, Meghan. It's such a delight to do this together. Meghan has been a partner in this course for at least 4 years now and has really helped it develop and evolve. So this will be a two-way conversation about the course. But let me tell you a little bit about my own background. I've been at MIT and at Sloan for quite a few years. I came in 1980. I taught at Cornell, where they have a School of Labor and Industrial Relations. And that's where I got my start in this field. But at MIT, we have a small group that works to do research and to teach on work and employment issues. And so I'm fortunate to be in a very vibrant group of people who share a passion about improving the workplace and improving the quality of jobs, as well as improving organizational performance. And so those are the kind of goals that we have in our work in a variety of different ways. And I've focused for many years on labor management relations in particular, how to get companies and unions and other groups of workers to work in a collaborative way to drive improvements in organizational performance and also to improve the quality of their jobs and their careers. And so that's the background to what I've been doing over the years. And then we'll get into how I got interested in this particular course on shaping the future of work as we observe more and more deterioration in the opportunities for many people out there in the workforce, and the feeling that we needed to go beyond just teaching and doing research in the confines of the MIT boundaries. And so I'm delighted to be part of this. As people introduce themselves, I noticed in the chat, wonderful representation from all over the world. So welcome to everyone.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, and it would be great to hear from you. I think I've heard you say a number of times that you never thought that you would get into online teaching. And I don't really recall why it was that you decided to do this in the first place.
Well, you're right, Meghan. I've joked about this to other people. If 10 years ago, if someone would have said, well, you should really get into teaching some online course, I'd have said, you're crazy. That's not what I do. I teach students in the classroom. And sure, we give talks and here and there all over the place, but that's not what I do. But it became more and more evident that that we had material, we have a message that needed to get out to other audiences beyond the confines of our boundaries and our students. and particularly in the early part of the development of the course to young people. Because I was so concerned that what we call the American dream, that every generation should be able to have a career that is in some ways a bit better than their parents and maybe move up in their standard of living. We were losing that in the United States, and this generation was not able to experience that American dream as much as my generation was fortunate to experience. That bothered me, and I thought, well, we've got to start talking to the next generation about how they can influence their careers, how they can shape work, how they can improve these issues and really make a contribution. So that the interest of reaching a broader audience to address that question was really what finally got me to do it. And I had a sabbatical, and a good colleague of ours, Barbara Dyer, was saying, well, what are you going to do in this year? And I said, I don't know. I've got this project and I got that project and that project. And then this other, she said, well, that's what you should do then. That's what you're really concerned about. So set that as your priority and not 6 other projects. And I followed her advice for good or for bad.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can say how I got involved with the course. And Tom had run it for several years before I got involved. I think I got involved in year 5 or 4.
Four.
Because I was working on a workforce education project, looking at how we can use digital learning tools in sort of training the workforce of the future. So I was kind of getting involved in this future of work conversation at MIT and looking at resources to help learn about what was going on. So I actually took Tom's course. And as I took the archived version that had finished running the year before, I thought, this could be better. No offense, Tom. But so then I happened to meet Tom at a faculty retreat, like a week later, and I sort of brought this up to him, and he was like, "Great! Like, why don't you, join the team and we can rework the course to update it." So that around the same time, the MIT task force on the work of the future was being sort of rounded up and tasked with writing this big report about the work of the future and MIT's role in it. So we thought that we could use that as inspiration for remodeling the course. Tom, if you want to say a little bit more about that.
Well, that's exactly the way it transpired. And I was so delighted that to hear that Meghan had taken the course, had some views about it, some things she liked, but some things that she thought could be improved pretty dramatically. And so the best thing that ever happened was to have Meghan take the course outline and then systematically go through it and say, well, this is what we should keep, and this is what we need to change and improve, and here's some new things. And the course had kind of 3 points up until then. One was, look, we can build organizations from what we call the high road. That is, we can engage in business strategies and employment practices that produce high levels of productivity and therefore can produce and support good jobs, and the company can be successful and the workforce can thrive and improve their conditions. Or there's an alternative, low road, that doesn't produce those results. That was point number 1. The point number 2 was, and to do this, we also need to really rethink how we bring workers and their own organizations, unions and other forms of organizations into this process to build more collaborative relationships and to build enough power to keep this process going. And then the third point was, look, labor and management are embedded in a broader social contract that involves education and involves government, it involves our community leaders, and we have to think about how we update and build a new social contract that works for all of the stakeholders. So those were the kind of 3 pillars, but then along comes the task force on work of the future, and we see all this explosion of technology. So we added a 4th point, and that is, if we use technology successfully, if we shape it in ways that we know work based on a lot of research, we can make technology a complement in working to both drive innovation and productivity and to improve quality of work. And a lot of the evidence then that we drew on and a lot of the people we drew to sort of bring that message forward came from the MIT Task Force on Work of the Future. So that's where the course evolved, from the early stages of speaking to young people about how to restore the American dream in some sense, to this little bit broader but still coherent message that if we really work together and we use research, we can create organizations, we can sustain organizations that are successful and that also produce good jobs. And Meghan brought all kinds of new material, helped to internationalize it in significant ways, and to really deepen the learning, both the learning objectives, but also the delivery and the discussion that our participants had on the discussion forum, which we all really enjoyed and learned from.
Thanks, Tom. Thinking about what you were saying about sort of, I think the course itself evolved over time, reflecting kind of the changes happening in society. If you could speak a little bit about what you did to keep the course up to date, and sort of how your understanding of how people were feeling about the workforce and challenges were influenced by the course itself and also by just kind of things happening over the years.
One of the most satisfying aspects of teaching the course was to listen and to learn from the participants through the discussions, through what their comments were in evaluating the course, and then through this exercise that we developed together on building a new social contract, an online interactive process that they could complete. And at the end of the course, the kind of capstone was, all right, what should business do? What does labor need to do? What does government need to do? And what do we as educators need to do to contribute to a more modern and effective social contract governing the workplace? And by building on what the students or the participants in the class said each year, we kept updating it because we kept learning about what they wanted to see in that new social contract. And we listened to the discussion, and each year we would add to it based on that. And then, of course, there were world events. Along comes the Black Lives Matter. Along comes the Me Too movement. Along comes the election of Donald Trump, and all of the divisions out there across the world around immigrants and racial justice and concerns around the movement to political extremes and the loss of sort of people who were talking to each other. And so that challenged us to say, what can we say constructive? Not because we take a partisan political point of view, but because we have this sense that we've got to work together. And that really added a lot of energy to the course. And we brought more people in to talk about those issues from all around the world. We looked at the history of social contracts in countries like, we have someone from Brisbane and Australia in this session. We brought that into that country into the picture. From Europe, we had interviews with people from Africa. And so lots of really good material came together. And but it was evolving based on what we were hearing. And then we also developed a book, a textbook that went with this, with my friend of many years and colleague Lee Dyer at Cornell, who was teaching a parallel course, taking our material, working to help shape it as well, and then teaching his students at Cornell with a combination of in-classroom sessions and the online materials. So we then wrote that up into a textbook that we could use as well.
Yes, and I know you also used parts of the course in your course that you taught on campus, as well as the course that you co-taught between Harvard and MIT, if you want to talk about those courses and sort of how lessons learned from online teaching worked its way into the classroom.
Yes, when our president of MIT, Raphael Reif, first started talking about building MITx and online capabilities, he was very clear, and I actually had him in one of my classes talk about his vision, that he wants this development to have as much influence in how we teach, we teach on campus as it does reaching people out there outside of the MIT campus. And so we took that seriously and developed a course called Managing for People and Businesses for People and Profits, which mirrored the course that we were doing online. And I mentioned my colleague, Barbara Dyer, who encouraged me to develop this online initiative. Well, she and I co-developed then the Managing Businesses for People and Profits. And we used a lot of the material from the online course in that course. And we had our students from the on-campus course work with people in the online course, sometimes as what we call technical instructors who would help facilitate discussions and summarize discussions, but engaged with them so that they would learn what do people outside of the walls of MIT who are out there in the labor force have to say about the issues that they as future managers will be involved in leading. And one of the best moments when I knew this was really working was after each week we would kind of summarize on campus in class, well, what did you learn today or this week from the folks in the online course? And one of the MBAs just came up with this classic statement, and I can't even remember what the issue was that we were talking about, but she, and it was a young woman, I can still picture this conversation. She said, well, you know, one of the things is they don't think the way we do as MBAs. And Barbara and I sort of looked at each other and nodded and said, that's why we do this. So it really was really a lot of fun, really rewarding, and it had these reciprocal learning opportunities.
Yeah. Could you say a little bit about who the MOOC learners were, or like any?
Yeah, it started as a younger cohort. I think our median age in the first running was like 26 years old. By the time we did the sixth running, it was in the mid 30s, 35 or something like that. So over time, what happened is yes, we still were speaking to young new entrants into the labor force, but we attracted a large number of teachers who were teaching this out there in their colleges or in their high schools in various ways. We attracted a lot of professionals, consultants, trainers, people who were working with organizations to try to apply many of the ideas. We had some labor leaders and labor representatives from the front lines who participated. And we had people all over the world who were really interested in learning what is going on in the other countries from each other as well as from us. And so the numbers expanded, but the range of people and the diversity expanded. And we increased the age profile, went a little bit older because you had more professionals. That really strengthened the quality of the conversations and the richness that we all took away from the experience.
Yeah, I recall also when I joined it was I think in the midst of that transition, but there was a lot of people, especially in their 50s and 60s, sort of thinking about leaving the labor force, but concerned about what was happening for their grandchildren or their friends and community, and sort of what they could do to help create a better workforce for these people as they were sort of leaving it. I thought that was interesting. But one of the big impacts of the course, of course, was COVID. I don't know if you can remember back that far, but
yeah, I can vividly remember because COVID began in the middle of a labor management dispute that I was mediating out in Seattle. And so we were right on the front lines of where it was coming. It was a hospital case of hospital employees and their big nonprofit hospital. And it was a very difficult dispute, but right in as we were out there, as I was out there, COVID hit Seattle and it hit their hospital. And so it was pretty traumatic. But COVID obviously affected all of us in, in many cases, unfortunate ways, but in a shock that forced us to think about what's going on here. What does this mean to the world of work? How do we respond? How are organizations dealing with it? And we drew on many people's experiences, and we got many testimonials, as you know, from people in the course saying, they don't understand whoever they is. Maybe it's managers, maybe it's government. They don't understand what we are putting up with, what we have to deal with, these so-called essential workers who are out there on the front lines. So we got some very, very personal stories about this. And we were challenged then to say, well, how do we think about adjusting to changes like this? What can we do? How do we understand the challenges, and how can we encourage business leaders to listen to their employees, to open up to flexible work systems, to use hybrid work where possible, and to respect the need to integrate better, or to take into account better people's home responsibilities, now that many people had more complicated situations at home, and their work responsibilities. And I must say that we probably added less new research insight into that segment of the course or those discussions than the people themselves. That's where their experiences, positive and negative, became most valuable. So the advantage of a course like this is it's a mutual learning opportunity. And if we just trust our participants and urge them to bring their stories into the course, it becomes a much, much richer experience for everyone, including learning on our part. And then there was this challenge of dealing with the US situation during the very traumatic years that we experienced with our former president. We worked really hard not to become partisans, not to speak for or against the president and the administration, but to use the events that were happening to illustrate maybe there are better ways to deal with some of these issues than what we're seeing play out. Maybe we can moderate some of the rhetoric and get down to what the evidence has to say about these issues. So our job, I think, at that point turned into one of being a little bit more steady and saying we can get through some of this traumatic experience, and we have to look to the future, not dwell too much just on where we are today, and avoid bringing our own personal views of this into the material. And so that was an interesting challenge, but I think it was a learning experience as well. And I think the people who participated appreciated that, because there were many people from outside the United States had this sense, tell us what in the world is going on in your country. And so that question kept coming up, and we had to address it in a respectful way.
So I would say that I was surprised at how few really fights or arguments broke out. There was a lot of respectful debate, but we didn't have to deal with any real problematic people or trolling. Everyone was very kind and respectful of each other's views. So it's pretty amazing for a 10,000 plus person course that's open online. But Tom, if you could talk a little bit about the book that you and Lee Dyer published that was sort of taken from the iterations of this course.
Yeah, and this book evolved in our own work. Now, as I said, Lee and I our dear friends and colleagues. We've worked together for over 40 years on this project or that project, and our families, our friends. We watched our kids grow up together and so on. So we know each other. And that helps because he's very honest in telling me when my paragraphs are too long, too convoluted, and here's the basic point. So we had a lot of fun, but we both shared this notion that it's our stage in career where we don't have to demonstrate by writing just another technical book or article, but we want to convey to our audiences that there are ways to address these issues, and we're going to write a book that is essentially a handbook on what can be done to shape and improve the future of work. And so that was great fun. We used the material from the class, and then we used the drafts of the book in the class. And so again, it was a mutual learning, and you'll see in the book, there are lots of examples and material and data come right from previous classes. And so that was the best of bringing teaching to life in our writing, and to do it in a collaborative way with someone who has somewhat different expertise than I do, and we could divide up some of the work, but we always could be frank and honest with each other about when we needed to change what we were doing. And so that was, it's one of the more rewarding writing experiences that I've had in my career. And I feel very good about what we've produced and what it might, how it might be used in the future.
I like that you describe it as a handbook, because I think that gets to something that I noticed from running the course over several years, which is that a lot of the learners are happy to learn about these issues, but what they really want is actionable things that they can do. Like, they're all very passionate about making a difference and really getting out there and applying this information.
Yeah.
Which I think has been a big inspiration for the next course that we're working on. Tom, if you want to say a little bit.
And I know we want to get to questions and comments from people, but Megan and I are working on a new version. We've retired the course because we thought it was time, but we're working now on a course just aimed at worker representatives, because one of the things that's become so apparent in our research on the future of work and the task force at MIT is that technology is obviously important. It's going to shape a lot of what happens in the workplace. But we've got to get out in front of technology and help to figure out how to use it effectively. And workers and worker representatives themselves need to have better knowledge and tools and abilities to influence the future of how technology is used, from the early stage design stage of the process right through implementation at work. And so we've developed a course that's just aimed right at that set of issues for that target audience of people on the front lines trying to represent workers in technology decisions and strategies to improve the quality of work and improve the performance of the organization. Really excited about it. Megan's already got lots of ideas on how we're going to shape it. We're working with a group at the AFL-CIO, the American Federation of Labor, the big labor federation in the United States. They have a technology institute, so we're doing this in partnership with them. So I'm really excited about that, and it's great fun. A challenge, to be sure, but we'll get there.
Great. So now I guess we can turn to questions from the audience. Just looking at the list that the moderators have put together. The first one from is asking sort of who can pursue this course, looking at like what kind of prerequisites are you looking for, or background would you need to be able to keep up?
I think anyone who's interested in these issues should take it. I don't think there's any prerequisites. We don't have a lot of math or analytical work in it. We have data and graphs and materials and and so on that will visualize the issues that we're talking about. We don't assume that you have a background in work and employment or management for that matter. Just take it and sample it for what it's worth. And you may want to take the whole course, or you may find some parts of it that are more meaningful to you than others, and that's fine too. It's an educational resource we hope will have a long lifespan, even though we're not updating it right now.
Yeah, and just to point to that, though the course is archived, it's still available to for people to sign up on edX for free. So it's still open to see and discuss with people. I think conversations are still happening there. But Tom, if you have any other places that you might recommend people could keep up to date about learning about the future of work and.
Well, I would really recommend our website in the Sloan School. It's called IWER. It's Institute for Work and Employment Research. So if you just Google Institute for Work and Employment Research, it'll show up. And we have a lot of good material on there that is updated by Martha Mangelsdorf, our great communication specialist. And so we're constantly putting new articles, blogs, interesting dialogue from other places that we observe, and trying to be a resource that continuously puts these ideas out there for conversation. And we're starting a new research project on how to rebuild worker voice in new ways. So there's more to come.
Yeah, another question is, what do you see as the essential skills, foundational elements to be successful in the future workforce?
That's a really important question. And so much emphasis is placed on digital skills, the ability to work with big data and robotics and artificial intelligence. And clearly, those technical skills are important, and they will continue to be important and maybe more important in the future. But we've also learned from lots of research, it's the people who have both the technical skills and the social skills. And when the two come together, that is when you can use technology and you can communicate with your team or with your colleagues or with your boss or with the people that report to you and work in diverse teams to say, here's how we can solve some of our problems at work with new technology, and put that in place, and then learn from it, continuously monitor it. But it's the combination of those technical skills and those social skills to communicate, to solve problems, to work in teams, to resolve conflicts when they occur. That's the set of skills combined that are so important. And then to keep those current by continuing to learn as you go along.
We have another question on how we sort of kept the curriculum sort of dynamic and fluid over the years. And Molly Ruggles is asking, does the course change every year in response to student input, current events, or social issues, and how much does it change, and how much of the core does it remain the same?
We changed it every year, more when Meghan got involved, because she was staying on top of what parts were working. We reviewed what the students in the class said about the course and what they found most useful, and then adapted. We certainly brought current events in, and often in the course, we would do a weekly update video, and if an issue was arising that was getting some attention or warranted our attention out there in the world, it was really useful then to bring that in. Maybe it was a labor dispute. Maybe it was an innovation in the use of new technology, a case that was in the media somewhere. Maybe it was some political development and policy debate that was being debated in Congress or in some place around the world. And those are teachable moments. Those are teachable materials because people can relate to it. They have views on it. You bring it up, you put it on the course website. You encourage people to comment on it. And lo and behold, it's a learning opportunity. So yes, it was updated each year, but it was also updated on a periodic basis. And then once in a while, when something really significant occurred, and I remember it was certainly the Black Lives Matter emerging, we would then write a special email to the full list of participants to say, here are some resources, you really should look at this, we need to talk about it, and brought it out in that way.
Yeah, and I can say I recall from when I joined, I think for the year that I had remodeled the course, I think we kept like 10% of the course from the previous year. So like 90% of it was new. So it was pretty much a new course. And a lot of people that had previously taken it came back and took it again. And in fact, a number of them took it every year because of the changes. And I think mostly just because they liked the conversations with the other learners. Mm-hmm. There's a question for me. It says, in what ways did you think the course could be improved? Was it the materials or the approach or both? And how did your expertise factor into your ideas for changing it? So I would say the way that I had thought it could be improved at the time was just to reflect the kind of contemporary discussions around the future of work that I was seeing as I was entering into this research project, working in this area. I think my expertise was mostly as a novice coming into the area and being able to sort of do a survey of the landscape and say, like, this is sort of what all of these different groups are talking about, but it's sort of missing from this course, which I think should be a survey of like an introduction to this conversation. So I think my expertise was really just kind of being able to come in and suggest ideas as someone with fresh eyes looking at the material.
Well, and it just illustrates the value of having fresh eyes and a fresh mind. Somebody who's committed to the mission of the course, coming in and having the self-confidence to say, look, here are some things that need to change, and here's some not only that, but then here's how we could do it, and let's talk about it and let's figure it out. So it was the combination of Meghan's free spirit, her mind, her fresh eyes, and her technical skill for how to design a course. How do people learn, and how can we use these digital tools more effectively than perhaps someone like myself had appreciated. So it's, again, the technical and the social came together in Meghan's contribution.
Yeah, and I think because in my role as digital learning scientist, I had already made a number of other MOOCs for edX and had a lot of lessons learned from what kinds of, like how to phrase discussion forums to get the best kinds of discussion going, or how to design educational tools to sort of accomplish the goals that you're looking for. So I could also bring that to the course as well, which was helpful. We have another question. Someone was saying, Robin was saying that she took an earlier iteration of the course and was interested in how we had set up the course to critique other students' posts and to sort of engage. And she was asking how we thought about that, and are those responses collated and available somewhere?
Well, learning from each other and holding each other accountable for providing peer evaluations and comments, I think, is a very interesting and important feature of the MITx approach, because that really helps us to learn from each other and holds us all accountable then as participants to be an active participant, not to be a passive participant. If you want to be get the certificate, then you've got to do these things. And it's everybody's responsibility to provide some feedback to each other. And I think that's a very valuable thing. And frankly, when you have thousands of people taking a course, it's more than what Meghan and I could do to respond and evaluate everyone. So there's a practical feature of this, but there's also a really good pedagogical feature to it as well. Now, can they have access to all of that? Megan, I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah, unfortunately, the discussion comments and the responses are not collated anywhere, but they are still available on the courses. So if you actually just enrolled in the courses and looked at the discussion forums, all of the discussion is still there, so you can still read it. And what I can say about sort of my philosophy of designing the discussion forums, especially for this course, which is sort of a problem that we often face in course design, is that we are dealing with professors who mostly focus on American topics, like their research is in the United States, but the course audience is global. And in fact, the majority of the learners are not from the United States. So trying to use the discussion forum as a way to create more international content and allow people to sort of bring their own expertise to the conversation and educate people about what's happening in their countries and what the social contract of work looks like and how it has evolved in similar or different ways to the United States or other countries over time. So I think that was like one of the most vibrant aspects of the course, was seeing these experts really from all over the world sort of weigh in on these issues and educate us and the rest of the learners.
Yes, getting that world, that global perspective into the course was really important. And I see one of our participants here, Inez van Wiederhausen, was a real contributor to that process, bringing her contacts, her understanding of the European environment into the course in such creative ways. So, Inez, good to see you.
There's another question more about the future of work, asking if we should look for a return to mentorship or apprenticeship.
Absolutely. We believe it's so clear that lifelong learning is important. And the way in which we start out early in our careers by getting the right educational base, whether that's a technical education or through a technical school or through a college or a university, absolutely is important, but it's only the beginning of the learning process, not the end of the learning process. And so apprenticeships, which combine learning in the classroom, maybe learning online, with on-the-job experience, and then coming back, applying it on the job, learning from it, coming back and discussing it and building on that, is one of the most powerful tools that we have. And that does require mentors, because it requires someone to work with the apprentices early on, provide feedback, provide guidance, show them where they are doing well and where they've got more to learn, and then learning from them so that you continue this learning process. So more senior people learn from the new entrants about some of the maybe new tools that are available, but the young people learn from the more experienced about, well, here's how we can put this to work. Here's some tacit aspects of learning that I can pass on to you by showing you how we get this done. That combination of a learning culture and a learning environment to build lifelong learning into our organizations and our careers, absolutely critical for the future of work. That's the way we'll make work continue to change and improve and pay off for everyone.
I think we just have time for one very quick last question. I love this question, so I just wanted to say it. From Razik, to what extent do you believe that the future of work must be transparent, especially when it comes to transparent communication throughout the organization and the flow of information?
This is becoming a much, much more important issue now than even before, because now you have all this technology and algorithms and artificial intelligence tools that collect a lot of information and then sometimes are used to control the workforce and to monitor the workforce. And the workforce doesn't really have access to those same tools. We have an opportunity, we have a responsibility to make those algorithms, make all that information that's available to some people in the organization available to everyone, and to do it by protecting confidential personal data and information. If we do that, we will really accelerate the innovation process, because more people will see how they can use data and use information to move forward. But when we try to restrict it to a small group, that's when we get in trouble. And that's when eventually a whistleblower comes along and says, hey, this organization is hiding important information. If it's transparent and if everyone can see it, then it makes it open for discussion, and there's a mutual accountability that comes in that process. So I'm all for transparent organizations. Let's use all of this data that's available to improve everyone's experience at work. That's what this course was all about. That's what the future of work can achieve if we just keep at it. So Meghan, thank you for being such a great partner in this process and having a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone else for coming here today and listening to us talk and asking great questions, and for being a great audience. So I hope you have a great rest of your day or evening.